I stood there in my wedding dress at the church entrance, the silk fabric suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds as my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. My hands trembled as I read those 8 words that shattered everything. Don't expect anyone to show. The empty pews on the left side of the church confirmed what my heart already knew, but refused to accept. My entire family had abandoned me on the most important day of my life. Then another notification lit up my screen, and what I saw next made my blood run cold. A group photo from Maui showed all 47 members of my family raising champagne glasses on a pristine private beach, their smiles mocking me through the pixels. The caption underneath simply read, "Finally together." My bouquet slipped from my fingers as I realized this betrayal had been orchestrated for months, and they had chosen my wedding day as the perfect moment to destroy me completely. 6 months before that devastating moment, I was sitting in my corner office at Richmond Logistics, the family company I'd been running since I turned 21. The Seattle skyline stretched before me, but I barely noticed it anymore. My days started at 5 in the morning and rarely ended before 11 at night. While my older brother Brad spent his afternoons at the country club perfecting his golf swing, I was negotiating million-dollar contracts. My sister Jessica's biggest accomplishment that year was getting verified on social media, where she posted daily updates from her shopping sprees, funded by the trust our grandfather had left us all. My younger brother Tyler had dropped out of 3 colleges, each failure cushioned by our parents' endless supply of excuses and second chances. I had just closed the biggest deal in company history when my father summoned me to his office. Richard Richmond sat behind his mahogany desk like a king holding court, even though he hadn't actively managed anything in the business for 5 years. "Alysia," he said, not even looking up from his newspaper, "the quarterly reports need revision. The board wants to see 15% growth, not 12. Dad, 12% growth in this economy is exceptional." I explained, exhaustion creeping into my voice. "We've outperformed every competitor in the Pacific Northwest." He finally looked at me, then his gray eyes cold as winter rain. "Exceptional isn't enough. This family doesn't settle for anything less than perfection." That evening, I arrived late to Sunday dinner at my parents' Bellevue mansion. My mother, Patricia, didn't even acknowledge my apology for being delayed by a crisis at the warehouse. She was too busy fawning over Brad's new Rolex, a gift he'd bought himself with his quarterly bonus that I had earned for the company. "Oh, Alysia," my mother said as I served myself lukewarm mashed potatoes, "I've been meaning to tell you. We're planning the family reunion for June 15th this year. I've already put deposits down at the Maui resort." My fork clattered against my plate. "Mom, that's my wedding date. I sent you save the dates 3 months ago." She waved her manicured hand dismissively. "Well, you'll just have to change it. The entire extended family has already confirmed for Maui. Surely your little ceremony can be moved." Little ceremony. I felt my chest tighten. "Mom, we have 200 guests coming. The venue's been booked for a year." Brad snorted from across the table. 200 people want to watch you marry a public school teacher. Must be a slow weekend in Seattle." "Marcus is a wonderful man." I shot back, my voice shaking with anger I struggled to contain. "Sure he is," Jessica chimed in, examining her nails. "If you consider driving a 10-year-old Honda and living in a 1-bedroom apartment wonderful." Tyler didn't even look up from his phone. "At least she's getting married. That's more than any of us thought would happen after she scared off Blake Worthington." Blake Worthington. They still brought up the investment banker I'd dated briefly 5 years ago, the one who dumped me when I refused to quit my job and become a proper society wife. My father set down his wine glass with deliberate precision. "The reunion takes precedence, Alysia. Family comes first. Always." That night, after I'd driven home in tears, I decided to look over some company documents to distract myself. I pulled up the ownership files, needing to verify something for our lawyers. What I found made my blood turn to ice. My name appeared nowhere on any ownership documents. 7 years of 18-hour days of sacrificing everything for Richmond Logistics, and legally, I own nothing. Every share was divided between my parents and my siblings, even Tyler, who'd never worked a day in his life at the company. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. All those promises my father had made about earning my stake, about proving myself worthy of the Richmond legacy, had been lies. I was nothing more than their workhorse, keeping the company profitable while they reaped the benefits. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. For the first time in my life, I wondered if my family had ever seen me as anything more than a useful tool. 3 months before the wedding, I stood in the kitchen of our modest but charming rental house, checking the roast for the 5th time. Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind his chin, resting on my shoulder. "Honey, it's perfect. Stop worrying. I just want tonight to go well," I admitted, leaning into his warmth. "Maybe if our families can connect, my parents will finally see what I see in you." Marcus's family had arrived an hour early, eager to help with preparations. His mother, Diana, had immediately taken over the salad station, chatting warmly as she worked. His father, Robert, had fixed our squeaky cabinet without being asked, while Marcus's sister, Sarah, arranged flowers she'd brought from her own garden. This was what family felt like, I thought, watching them work together with easy coordination. "They're 45 minutes late," I whispered to Marcus as we peered through the dining room window. "Maybe traffic," he suggested, though we both knew my family lived only 20 minutes away. When they finally arrived, my mother swept in without apology, her critical gaze immediately cataloging every perceived flaw. "Oh, Alysia," she sighed, her voice dripping with disappointment. "I didn't realize the dinner would be so casual. I had spent 2 days preparing a 5-course meal, the table set with our best dishes and fresh flowers, but to Patricia Richmond, anything less than a catered affair was beneath consideration." Brad sauntered in next, making a show of checking his phone. "Sorry, some of us have actual business to attend to," he announced to no one in particular. "Just closed a major deal on the golf course." Jessica arrived in a cloud of expensive perfume, her latest designer dress clearly chosen to outshine anything I might wear. She air-kissed my cheek while eyeing my simple navy dress with undisguised pity. "How quaint," she murmured. "Very authentic." Tyler slouched in last earbuds, still in barely acknowledging anyone's existence. The evening deteriorated from there. When Robert tried to engage my father in conversation about the Seahawks, Dad responded with a lecture about how sports were a distraction for the working class. Diana's homemade rolls, which had won prizes at the state fair, were met with my mother's observation that store-bought is so much more consistent. During the main course, Brad decided to interrogate Marcus about his financial planning. "So, a teacher's salary," he mused, twirling his wine glass. "What's that like, $40,000 a year? How exactly do you plan to support my sister?" "We support each other," Marcus replied calmly, though I could see the tension in his jaw. "Alysia and I are partners." Jessica laughed, a tinkling sound devoid of warmth. How progressive. Though I suppose when one person makes real money and the other makes teacher money, partnership looks different. The breaking point came during Marcus's toast. He stood raising his glass with genuine emotion in his voice. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight. When I met Alysia, I knew I'd found someone extraordinary. Not because of what she does or what she has, but because of who she is. Her kindness, her integrity, her dedication to making the world better, these are the things that matter. I promise to spend every day of our marriage making sure she knows how valued and loved she is." His family applauded warmly. Mine sat in stone-faced silence. That's when Jessica accidentally knocked over her red wine, the liquid spreading across the white tablecloth and splashing onto my dress. "Oh no!" she gasped with fake concern. "Your pretty little dress." Well, at least it wasn't expensive. As I stood to clean myself up, I heard Tyler snickering. He had his phone out, live streaming the entire dinner to his followers. "Check it out, guys," he stage whispered to his audience. "My sister's marrying down. The dude's dad is literally a plumber. Can you believe it?" Robert's face flushed, but he maintained his dignity. Sarah reached for his hand under the table. Diana kept her smile fixed, though I could see the hurt in her eyes. I escaped to the bathroom, pressing a towel to the wine stain and fighting back tears. Through the door, I heard my mother's voice speaking quietly, but not quietly enough. "Patricia Richmond," she said clearly on a phone call. "Yes, about the Maui reservation. No, we'll definitely need all the rooms." "What?" "Oh, that. Don't worry about that little scheduling conflict. There's going to be a family emergency that weekend that requires our immediate attention. Yes, the entire family. These things happen, you understand. Family comes first." She laughed, then a sound that chilled me to my core. My daughter needs to learn that choosing an unsuitable husband has consequences. Consider this a valuable life lesson. I gripped the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed like a stranger, someone who had spent 28 years trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. As I heard my mother end her call and return to the table where she seamlessly resumed her role as the concerned parent, I finally understood. This wasn't about Marcus's job or our modest home. This was about control, and my family would rather destroy my happiness than relinquish even an ounce of their power over me. When I returned to the dining room, Marcus immediately stood and came to my side. His family exchanged worried glances. My family continued eating as if nothing had happened, discussing their summer plans for Europe while pointedly excluding me from the conversation. "Should we serve dessert?" Diana asked gently, trying to salvage something from the evening. "I think we're done here," my father announced, pushing back from the table. "Alysia, I need you in the office early tomorrow. The Henderson contract needs review." They left without thanking us for dinner, without acknowledging the effort we'd made, without even pretending to welcome Marcus into the family. As their luxury cars pulled away, I stood in the doorway feeling hollow. Marcus's family stayed to help clean up, working quietly and efficiently. Sarah hugged me tight before leaving. "He doesn't deserve you," she whispered. "None of them do." I assumed she meant my family didn't deserve me as a daughter. Looking back, I realized she was absolutely right. 2 months before the wedding, I received a text at 6 a.m. "My office, 8 sharp, come alone." The message from my father was typical in its terseness, but something about it made my stomach clench with dread. I arrived to find not just my father, but all 3 of my siblings arranged like a tribunal behind his desk. Brad wore his trademark smirk, the one that had gotten him out of trouble since childhood. Jessica examined her nails with affected boredom, though I could see the excitement glittering in her eyes. Tyler, for once, wasn't staring at his phone. "Sit," my father commanded, gesturing to the single chair placed in the center of the room like I was on trial. I remained standing. "What is this about?" "The future of Richmond logistics," he replied, steepling his fingers. "More specifically, your future with this company." Brad leaned forward, barely containing his glee. "Dad and I have been discussing the leadership structure. Given recent developments, we feel a change is necessary." Recent developments. I kept my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "You mean the record profits I've delivered for 5 consecutive quarters?" "We mean your engagement to that teacher," Jessica interjected, saying teacher like it was a contagious disease. "The Richmond name carries weight in this city. You're diluting our brand." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Our brand, Jessica. You've never worked a day in your life. What could you possibly know about our brand?" "I know enough," she snapped. "I know that when I tell people I'm a Richmond doors open, when you marry that nobody those doors start closing." Tyler finally spoke up, his voice carrying an unusual edge of confidence. "I've been learning a lot about the company lately. The systems, the passwords, the security protocols. Fascinating stuff." A chill ran down my spine. "You've been accessing company systems, Tyler, that's—" "Initiative," my father interrupted. "Something you used to have before you became distracted by this ridiculous romance." He stood then, moving around the desk with the calculated precision of a predator. "So here's what's going to happen, Alysia. You're going to call off this engagement. You're going to tell everyone you've realized your mistake. and in return, you keep your position here. And if I refuse, Brad's grin widened. Then you'll be demoted to entry-level analyst. Corner office goes to someone who understands family loyalty. Someone like you, I asked, though I already knew the answer. I've been preparing, he said with mock modesty. Jessica's been shadowing your assistant, learning all your contacts. Tyler's been documenting every process. We're ready for a smooth transition. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This had been planned for months, maybe longer. Every family dinner where they'd mocked Marcus, every snide comment about his profession, had been laying groundwork for this moment. You want me to choose between my fiancé and my career? My voice came out steadier than I felt. We want you to choose between a future with the Richmond legacy and throwing it all away for some bleeding heart educator who probably can't even afford a proper honeymoon, my mother said from the doorway. I hadn't heard her arrive, but of course she was there. The whole family united against me. I looked at each of them in turn. My father, who'd built his empire on the backs of others' work. My mother, who measured love in dollar signs and social status. Brad, whose incompetence was legendary among our staff. Jessica, who thought influence meant Instagram followers. Tyler, who'd failed at everything except apparently corporate espionage. I choose Marcus, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face turned an alarming shade of purple. Then you choose nothing. Security will escort you to your office. You have 1 hour to collect your personal items. Your parking pass, company credit cards, and executive privileges are revoked immediately. You can't do this, I protested. I have contracts and negotiation clients who depend on me. Had Brad corrected gleefully. Past tense. I'll be taking over the Henderson account immediately. Don't worry, I'll try not to undo all your adequate work. As security arrived to escort me out like a common criminal, I turned back to my family. You know I'm the only reason this company is profitable, right without me. Without you, my father said coldly, we'll manage just fine. Richmond Logistics existed before you and it will thrive after you're gone. The walk to my office felt endless. Colleagues stared as I passed with a security guard at my elbow. My assistant Amy looked stricken as I began packing my things. I don't understand, she whispered, glancing nervously at the guard. What happened? Family business. I replied, the irony bitter in my mouth. As I packed, Amy slipped me a flash drive. Everything you might need, she murmured, including some interesting emails between your siblings about the Patterson Industries deal. I palmed the drive, grateful for her loyalty. In 7 years, I'd built relationships my family couldn't buy or intimidate away. The hour passed too quickly. As I carried my box of belongings to the elevator, employees lined the hallway. Some looked shocked, others sympathetic. A few seemed genuinely angry on my behalf. This is wrong, Tom from accounting said loudly. You're the best thing that ever happened to this company. The only competent Richmond, agreed Linda from HR, not bothering to lower her voice. My family had won this battle, but something in those supportive faces made me wonder if the war was far from over. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking garage staring at the flash drive Amy had given me. With shaking hands, I plugged it into my laptop. What I found made my blood run cold. Emails between my siblings dating back years discussing how to push me out. Financial records showing mysterious transfers to offshore accounts. And most damning correspondence with our biggest competitor, Stillwater Shipping, offering to sell insider information. They weren't just trying to control me. They were willing to destroy everything our grandfather had built out of spite and greed. I drove home in a daze, finding Marcus waiting with dinner and a bottle of wine. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. They fired me, I whispered against his chest. My own family fired me for choosing you. He held me tighter. Then they're idiots, and we'll prove it to them. As I showed him what I'd discovered on the flash drive, his expression grew increasingly grim. Alysia, this is criminal. They're committing fraud. I know, I said quietly. The question is, what do I do about it? Marcus took my hands in his. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But honey, these people, they're not your family. Family doesn't do this to each other. That night, as I lay awake planning my next move, I realized Marcus was right. I'd been fighting for acceptance from people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. But somewhere in Seattle, there was a grandmother's will my parents had hidden from me. There was a company built on my work that they'd stolen. And there was enough evidence of their crimes to bring everything crashing down. They thought they'd won by casting me out. They had no idea they'd just set me free. 6 weeks before the wedding was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. Instead, I woke each morning with a knot of dread in my stomach, wondering what fresh hell my family would unleash that day. They didn't disappoint. It started subtly. My wedding coordinator called confusion evident in her voice. Alysia, I just received a cancellation notice for your venue. The email came from your mother. That's a mistake, I assured her, my heart racing. My mother has no authority to cancel anything. Well, she claimed to be handling the payments and said the wedding was off. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I spent 3 hours on the phone confirming our booking and explaining the situation. The venue manager was understanding but warned me to password protect all my vendor accounts. It was good advice that came too late. Over the next 2 weeks, my mother systematically contacted every vendor. The florist received a tearful call about how the wedding was canceled due to my fiancé's infidelity. The caterer was told I'd been diagnosed with a severe illness and needed to postpone indefinitely. The photographer got an email supposedly from me filled with profanity and insults about their work. I've never seen anything like this, Marcus said as we sat surrounded by contracts and phone numbers trying to salvage our plans. Your mother's like a one-woman wrecking crew. But she wasn't working alone. Brad had taken his sabotage in a different direction, targeting Marcus's family directly. He showed up at Robert's plumbing business pretending to be a concerned future brother-in-law. I feel you should know, Brad had told Robert, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Alysia's been seeing her ex-boyfriend, that investment banker, Blake Worthington. They've been meeting at hotels. I have photos. The photos Marcus's father later told us were clearly doctored. My face had been poorly photoshopped onto someone else's body. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Brad made sure to spread the rumor throughout Marcus's extended family. Jessica's approach was more modern and equally vicious. She spent hours creating fake social media accounts, posting old photos of me with various men from business dinners and conferences. Each photo was carefully captioned to suggest romantic involvement. She tagged Marcus, his family members, and our wedding guests. Look at this one. Marcus showed me his phone with disgust. She's claiming this picture of you with the governor at last year's charity gala is from a secret weekend getaway. The harassment escalated daily. My bridesmaids received messages warning them about my unstable behavior and suggesting they might want to reconsider their involvement. 2 of them called me in tears, forwarding screenshots of the vitriol my sister had sent them. Tyler's contribution was perhaps the most damaging. Using skills I didn't know he possessed, he hacked into my email account. The messages he sent were calculated to cause maximum destruction. To my maid of honor, Claire, I've been thinking, and I don't really want you in my wedding anymore. You've gained weight and you'll ruin the photos. To Marcus's cousin, who'd agreed to read a poem, don't bother coming. Your poetry is terrible, and I only asked you because Marcus insisted. To the string quartet, cancel the booking. We've decided your music is too pretentious for our guests. Each message was perfectly crafted to sound just enough like me to be believable, but cruel enough to burn bridges. By the time I discovered the breach and changed all my passwords, the damage was extensive. 23 people. I told Marcus one evening, exhausted from making apology calls. 23 people I've had to convince that I didn't send those horrible messages. How many believed you? He asked gently. Most of them, but some. I trailed off, thinking of my college roommate who'd coldly informed me she couldn't support someone who would treat people so callously. The stress was taking its toll on both of us. Marcus developed insomnia, lying awake, worried about what they'd do next. I lost 12 pounds I couldn't afford to lose my wedding dress, hanging looser with each fitting. "Maybe we should just elope," Marcus suggested one night after my phone rang with the 15th threatening call of the day. Vegas City Hall, anywhere they can't reach us. No. The word came out fiercer than I intended. I won't let them win. We're having our wedding with the people who truly love us, and my family can rot in their spite. The breaking point came when I visited my grandmother's nursing home. Grandmother Richmond had been my only ally in the family, the one person who saw through their facades. Alzheimer's had stolen her memories 2 years ago, but I still visited weekly, finding comfort in her presence. "I'm sorry, dear," the receptionist said, looking uncomfortable. "You're no longer on the approved visitor list." "That's impossible. I have medical power of attorney." She typed something into her computer, frowning. "According to our records that was revoked last week, your mother is now the primary contact, and she's restricted your access." I stood there, stunned. They'd taken my job, attacked my wedding, and now they'd stolen my last connection to the one family member who'd ever truly loved me. In the parking lot, I broke down completely. Marcus held me as I sobbed, years of pain and rejection finally overwhelming my defenses. Through my tears, I told him about finding grandmother's original will years ago, before the Alzheimer's diagnosis. "She left me everything," I whispered. "The house in Magnolia, her investment portfolio, all of it. She told me she knew the others would waste it, but I would use it wisely." "So where's the will now?" Marcus asked. "That's just it. After her diagnosis, my parents took over her affairs. The will mysteriously disappeared and a new one appeared, leaving everything to them. I've been fighting for 2 years to find the original." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "Your grandmother was a smart woman, right? The smartest. Brilliant. She built the company alongside my grandfather when women weren't supposed to understand business. Then maybe," he suggested slowly, "she made provisions for something like this. Maybe there's another copy somewhere your parents don't know about." That night, while my family celebrated their latest cruelty, I began searching through every document I had from my grandmother. Letters, cards, photographs, looking for any clue she might have left. At 3 a.m, I found it. Hidden in the backing of a framed photo she'd given me for my 21st birthday was a business card for a law firm in Portland. Written on the back in her careful script, "When you need this, you'll know." I stared at that card until the sun came up, hope blooming in my chest for the first time in weeks. My family thought they'd been thorough in their destruction. They'd underestimated both me and the grandmother who'd seen them for what they really were. The war wasn't over, it had barely begun. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was standing in my kitchen making coffee when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my mother standing on my doorstep clutching a container and dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Every instinct screamed at me not to open that door, but 28 years of conditioning won out. "Alysia," she said, her voice trembling with what seemed like genuine emotion. "Please, sweetheart, I need to talk to you." She looked different from her usual perfectly polished self. Her makeup was slightly smudged, her usually immaculate hair showed gray roots, and she wore a simple cardigan instead of her typical designer blazer. In her hands was a tin of snickerdoodles, the cookies she used to make when I was young before household staff took over such mundane tasks. "May I come in?" she asked softly. "I know I don't deserve it, but please." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She entered tentatively, as if afraid I might change my mind. Marcus was at school teaching his 3rd graders about photosynthesis, leaving me alone to face whatever manipulation she'd planned. "I've been baking," she said, setting the cookies on my counter. "I haven't done that in years. Do you remember how you used to help me roll the dough in cinnamon sugar?" I did remember. Those rare afternoons when she'd dismiss the housekeeper and we'd work side by side in the kitchen, flour in our hair and laughter filling the space between us. Before Brad excelled at lacrosse and demanded all her attention. Before Jessica's beauty pageants consumed her weekends. before Tyler's birth complications made her too anxious to let him out of her sight. "What do you want, Mom?" I kept my voice neutral, refusing to be drawn into nostalgia. She sank onto my couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "I want my daughter back. I've been horrible, Alysia. We all have." "That's an understatement." "I know." Tears rolled down her cheeks, and for once they seemed real. "I've been lying awake thinking about what we've done. Your father and I. We lost our way somewhere. The money, the status, maintaining our position in society, it all became more important than what really matters." She pulled out a photo album I recognized from my childhood, its leather cover worn with age. "I brought this. I thought maybe we could look through it together." Despite myself, I sat beside her as she opened the album. There I was at 5, missing my front teeth, grinning as she pushed me on a swing. At 10, both of us covered in cake batter after attempting to make my birthday cake from scratch. At 16, her arms around me after I'd won the state debate championship. "You were always so driven," she murmured, tracing a photo with her finger. "So determined to make us proud. And instead of cherishing that, we exploited it." "Mom!" "No, let me finish." She turned to face me fully. "I've been a terrible mother. I let my own insecurities and need for control poison our relationship. When you chose Marcus, someone who loves you for exactly who you are, I should have celebrated. Instead, I felt threatened." She talked for an hour, sharing stories I'd never heard about her own controlling mother, about the pressure she'd felt to be perfect, about how she'd sworn she'd never do the same to her children, and then watched herself repeat every mistake. "I called your father last night," she said eventually. "Told him if he goes through with this vendetta against you, he'll lose me too. I won't be part of destroying my daughter's happiness anymore." "And what did he say?" Her face fell. "He accused me of being weak, said I was letting emotion cloud my judgment. But Alysia, I don't care anymore. I want to be at your wedding. I want to see you happy. I want to know Marcus better, this man who clearly adores you." She pulled out her phone, showing me screenshots. "I've already started fixing things. I called the florist and explained the misunderstanding. Told the caterer that any cancellation requests should be ignored unless they come directly from you. I even reached out to some of your bridesmaids to apologize for the family's behavior." I wanted so badly to believe her. The child in me who'd craved her approval was soaring at these words. But the woman who'd been betrayed repeatedly held back. "Prove it," I said quietly. "If you really want to make amends, prove it." "How?" "Come to the venue with me tomorrow. Tell them in person that any interference from the family should be ignored. Call Marcus's parents and apologize for Brad's lies. Stand up to Dad publicly, not just in private phone calls." "Done," she said immediately. "All of it. And I'll do more. I'll help with whatever you need for the wedding. I know I don't deserve to be involved, but if you'll let me." Over the next week, she seemed to keep her word. She accompanied me to vendor meetings, publicly supporting my choices. She had lunch with Diana Marcus's mother, offering genuine apologies and praise for raising such a wonderful son. She even confronted Brad at a family dinner, which I heard about from Amy, who still had sources inside the company. "You should have seen it," Amy told me over coffee. "Your mother actually threw a glass of wine in Brad's face when he called Marcus a gold digger. Told him he wasn't fit to shine Marcus's shoes." My mother started dropping by regularly, always with some small gesture. Wedding magazines with sticky notes on ideas she thought I'd like, a family heirloom bracelet she'd saved from her own mother, contact information for a lawyer she said might help with the inheritance situation, though she claimed to know nothing about any will suppression. "I'm trying to get into your father's safe," she confided one afternoon. "He keeps all the important documents there. If there's anything about your grandmother's will, that's where it would be." The transformation seemed complete when she showed up one evening with Marcus's favorite beer and tickets to a Mariners game for him and Robert. "Peace offering," she said simply. "I know I have a lot to make up for." Marcus remained skeptical. "It's too convenient," he warned me privately. 3 weeks of terrorizing us, and suddenly she's Mother Teresa. But I was weakening. She knew exactly which buttons to push, which childhood memories to invoke. When she offered to pay for a makeup artist as a wedding gift, insisting she wanted me to feel like a princess, on my day I found myself crying in her arms. "I've missed this," I whispered. "Me too, sweetheart, more than you know." The Friday before the wedding, she invited me to her house while my father was golfing. "I want to show you something," she said mysteriously. In her pristine home office, she pulled out a folder. "I've been documenting everything. Your father's vendetta, the boys' sabotage, Jessica's social media attacks. I'm building a case for you, evidence that might help with any legal action you decide to take." I flipped through the papers, seeing emails, phone records, financial documents. It was comprehensive, damning, and exactly what I'd need if I pursued charges. "What?" I asked, overwhelmed. "Because you're my daughter," she said simply, "and it's time I acted like your mother." As I left that day folder tucked under my arm, she hugged me tightly. "1 week until you're Mrs. Chen," she said warmly. "I can't wait to watch you marry the man you love." That night, I showed Marcus the documents. He examined them carefully, his expression growing increasingly puzzled. "Alysia," he said slowly, "some of these emails are from last night. How did she get access to your father's current correspondence?" "She said she's been monitoring his computer." "And this," he pointed to a vendor contract, "this has information that even you didn't have until yesterday. How did she know the exact figure for the catering adjustment?" A cold feeling crept into my stomach. Maybe Amy told her. Maybe, but his doubt was contagious. I thought about the past week, how she'd insisted on coming to every vendor meeting, how she'd photographed various documents for her records, how she'd asked detailed questions about our honeymoon plans, our new apartment lease, our schedule for the wedding day itself. "Oh God," I breathed, the pieces clicking together. "She's been gathering intelligence." "The reconciliation is fake?" Marcus asked, though we both knew the answer. I grabbed my phone, calling the venue. "Hi, this is Alysia Richmond. I need to verify who's accessed our booking information recently." The answer confirmed my fears. My mother had been there that morning, sweet-talking her way into reviewing all our arrangements, claiming she needed the details to arrange a surprise. One by one, I called our vendors. Each had a similar story. Patricia Richmond, the devoted mother, gathering information to make her daughter's day special. She'd gotten every detail, every timing, every plan. "She played me," I said numbly. Again, even knowing what she was capable of, I fell for it. Marcus wrapped his arms around me. "We all wanted to believe people can change. It's not weakness to hope for the best in others." But as I sat there surrounded by the evidence of my mother's elaborate deception, I realized the truth. She hadn't been building a case to help me. She'd been gathering intelligence for one final, devastating strike, and I'd handed her everything she needed to execute it. The wedding was 1 week away, and my family now knew every detail of our plans. The question was, what would they do with that information? I woke on my wedding day to sunlight streaming through the hotel room windows and the sound of happy chatter from the adjoining suite. Marcus's sisters Sarah and Emma had insisted on staying with me, creating the getting ready experience my own family should have provided. Diana, his mother, had arrived at dawn with fresh pastries and champagne for mimosas. "The princess awakens," Sarah announced, bouncing onto my bed with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever. "It's wedding day." For a moment, wrapped in their warmth and excitement, I forgot about my family's absence. These women had embraced me completely, offering the unconditional love I'd craved my entire life. Emma was already setting up her makeup station, while Diana hung my dress by the window where the morning light would catch the beading. "Marcus asked me to give you this," Diana said, handing me an envelope. "He said to read it before anything else today." Inside, his familiar handwriting made me smile. "Today I marry my best friend, my partner, my everything. Your family's loss is my eternal gain. I love you." My phone sat silent on the nightstand. No messages from my parents' siblings or extended family. I'd expected as much, but some foolish part of me had hoped they'd surprise me. that they'd choose love over whatever point they were trying to prove. Sarah noticed my glance. Don't even think about them today. You're surrounded by people who actually deserve you. The morning flew by in a blur of hairspray and laughter. Emma, a professional makeup artist, worked her magic while regaling us with stories of bridezillas who made me look like a saint. Sarah documented everything with her camera, promising to create an album that would make me cry happy tears. Diana fluttered around, making sure everyone ate something between beauty treatments. You need to see this, Emma said, showing me her phone. She'd posted a behind-the-scenes photo of my preparation, and the comments were flooding in from Marcus's extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, childhood friends, all sending love and excitement about welcoming me officially into their clan. That's what family looks like, Diana said softly, squeezing my shoulder. My maid of honor, Claire, arrived with the rest of my bridesmaids women who'd stood by me through every attack my family had launched. They'd weathered the nasty emails, the social media harassment, and the attempts to turn them against me. Their loyalty meant everything. Absolutely gorgeous, Claire breathed when I stepped into my dress. Marcus is going to lose his mind when he sees you. At exactly 2:00, we prepared to leave for the church. I checked my phone one last time, still hoping for something, anything from my blood relatives. Instead, I found a single text from my mother sent at 2:03 p.m. Don't expect anyone to show. The words hit like a physical blow. Even prepared for disappointment, the cruelty took my breath away. Sarah noticed my expression and gently took the phone from my shaking hands. What did she... She read the message and her face darkened. That bitter witch. How dare she... It's fine. I lied, blinking back tears that would ruin Emma's careful work. I knew they weren't coming. But knowing and experiencing were different things. As our cars pulled up to the church, I could see guests streaming in. Marcus's side would be packed with loving faces. My side would echo with emptiness, a visual representation of my family's abandonment. Claire helped me out of the car, careful with my train. Through the church's glass doors, I could see the interior, beautiful with the flowers we'd chosen. And I could see the left side of the church, row after row of empty pews where my family should have been. We can move people, Claire suggested quickly, even things out. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Let everyone see exactly who they are. As we organized in the vestibule, my phone buzzed again. Claire had given it back to me, and against my better judgment, I looked. A notification from my cousin Janet's Instagram story stopped my heart. There they were, all of them. Every single member of my extended family crowded onto a pristine beach in Maui. 47 people who should have been in those empty pews, raising champagne glasses in the sunset. The group photo was perfectly staged, everyone in coordinating tropical colors, smiles bright and carefree. The caption twisted the knife deeper. Finally together, Richmond Family Reunion 2024. Family first, blessed ochre perfect timing. I zoomed in, my hands trembling. There was my father in the center, patriarchal and proud. My mother beside him, her reconciliation act completely abandoned. Brad had his arm around a blonde I didn't recognize. Jessica posed like it was a fashion shoot. Even Tyler had put his phone down long enough to smile for the camera. Behind them, my aunts and uncles' cousins. I'd grown up with family friends who'd known me since birth. They'd all chosen this. They'd all participated in this coordinated cruelty. Another notification popped up. My Aunt Catherine had posted her own photo, a close-up of several family members toasting. The caption read, "Some celebrations are worth traveling for whereas Richmond reunion bring quality over quantity." Quality over quantity. The implication was clear. My wedding didn't make the cut. Emma appeared at my elbow. "Alysia, the music is starting. Are you ready?" Was I ready to walk down that aisle with half the church empty, to face the pitying looks from Marcus's family, to admit that my own blood had orchestrated this humiliation? Then I heard it. Marcus's cousin was playing the violin, the sweet melody we'd chosen together, floating through the doors. Somewhere beyond them, the man I loved was waiting for me. The man who'd stood by me through every attack, who'd held me through every tears, who'd chosen me when my own family wouldn't. "I'm ready," I said and meant it. Sarah quickly adjusted my veil while Claire made sure my train was perfect. Diana kissed my cheek, whispering, "You're already our daughter. Today just makes it official." The church doors opened and I could see him. Marcus stood at the altar, his face lighting up when our eyes met across the distance. His love radiated like sunshine, warming the cold places my family had left. I took my first step down that aisle past the empty pews that shouted my family's betrayal. But I kept my eyes on Marcus, on our future, on the family that chose me rather than the one that threw me away. They thought they'd broken me by leaving me alone on my wedding day. They had no idea they'd actually set me free. The walk down that aisle felt eternal. Each step echoed in the hushed sanctuary, the sound bouncing off the empty pews on the left side. I kept my eyes locked on Marcus, using his steady gaze as an anchor, while peripheral vision revealed the devastating scene. Dozens of empty seats stretched in neat rows, their vacancy screaming louder than any crowd could. Marcus's family filled the right side to capacity. I caught glimpses of familiar faces, their expressions shifting from joy to confusion to outrage as they processed what the empty pews meant. His grandmother clutched her handkerchief. His college roommates exchanged dark looks. Diana's sister whispered furiously to her husband. Halfway down the aisle, my phone vibrated in the small pocket Claire had sewn into my dress. We'd planned it for emergencies, never imagining I'd need it during the ceremony itself. But the repeated buzzing was insistent, demanding attention I couldn't give. Marcus never looked away from me. His jaw was set, his hands clenched at his sides, but his eyes blazed with love and determination. When I finally reached him, he immediately took my hands, squeezing them as if he could transfer his strength through touch alone. "You're here," he whispered. "That's all that matters." Pastor Williams, who'd counseled us through our engagement, looked troubled as he surveyed the imbalanced congregation. He'd known my family would be smaller than Marcus's, but this complete absence clearly shocked him. He cleared his throat, preparing to begin, when my phone buzzed again. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, fumbling for the pocket. I should turn it off. But the screen showed 17 new messages, all with photo attachments. My hands moved of their own accord, opening the first one. It was another beach photo, this one showing my parents renewing their vows under a flower-covered arch. The timestamp showed it was taken 20 minutes ago, exactly when I was putting on my dress. The next photo showed Brad giving a toast champagne flute raised high. The message from my cousin read, "Brad's speech about family loyalty brought tears to everyone's eyes. So powerful." Another cousin had sent video of Jessica catching the bouquet at my parents' renewal ceremony. "Looks like Jessica's next," the caption chirped. Claire, reading over my shoulder, gasped audibly. The congregation stirred, wondering what was causing the delay. Marcus's grip on my hands tightened. "They're not just skipping my wedding," I said numbly. "They're holding their own celebration at the exact same time." Pastor Williams leaned in concerned. "Alysia, would you like to take a moment?" "No," I said louder than intended. My voice carried through the sanctuary. "No, I want everyone to see this." I turned to face the congregation, holding up my phone. My family is currently in Maui holding their own ceremony while I stand here. They're toasting to loyalty while demonstrating none. They're celebrating togetherness while abandoning their daughter. Gasps rippled through Marcus's side. Someone muttered a curse that echoed in the sacred space. Robert Marcus's father looked ready to commit murder. "But you know what?" I continued, my voice growing stronger. "Their absence is a gift. Every empty seat represents a toxic person who won't poison my marriage. Every missing relative is one less hypocrite pretending to support a union they tried to destroy." I handed my phone to Claire and turned back to Marcus. "I'm done letting them hurt me. Let's get married." But the universe wasn't finished with its cruelty. As Pastor Williams opened his Bible, the church doors burst open. A courier jogged down the aisle, clearly uncomfortable with interrupting a wedding. Urgent delivery for Alysia Richmond, he announced, requires immediate signature. Are you kidding me? Marcus exploded. Get out! I'm sorry, sir, but I was told it's time-sensitive legal documentation. With shaking hands, I signed for the envelope. Inside were 3 documents that made my blood turn to ice. The first was termination paperwork from Richmond Logistics, post-dated to today, ensuring I'd receive no additional compensation. The second was a restraining order barring me from company property signed by a judge that morning. My father had claimed I posed a threat to business operations. The third document was the cruelest. It was a formal notice that I was being removed as beneficiary from all family insurance policies, trusts and estates. The effective date today, my wedding day. They planned this, I said, my voice eerily calm. Every detail, the timing of their ceremony, these documents, all of it. They wanted to destroy me at the exact moment I should be happiest. Sarah stood up in the front row. That's enough. Throw those papers away and marry this wonderful man. Don't let them steal another second of your joy. But I couldn't stop reading the attached note in my mother's handwriting. Consider this your wedding gift. You chose love over family. Now live with the consequences. Don't attempt to contact us again. The congregation was in uproar. Marcus's relatives shouted their outrage. His aunt was crying. His cousins looked ready to form a vigilante squad. Even Pastor Williams seemed to have forgotten his pastoral composure, his face red with indignation. Please, I said, raising my voice. Please, everyone, this is still my wedding day. Gradually, the chaos subsided. I looked at the papers in my hands, then at the empty pews, then at Marcus. My family had orchestrated this moment to break me to prove that choosing him meant losing everything else. You know what? I said, tearing the documents in half. They're right about one thing. I did choose love over family. Their kind of family anyway. I turned to Marcus's side, addressing the people who'd shown up, who'd stood by us, who'd offered real love without conditions or cruelty. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing me what family really looks like. Then something beautiful happened. Robert stood up. You're our daughter now, he said simply. Have been since the day Marcus brought you home. Diana joined him. Those empty seats will fill them with people who actually love you. One by one, Marcus's family members began moving to the left side of the church. His aunts and uncles, cousins, and friends crossing the aisle to fill the abandoned pews. Within minutes, both sides were balanced, but more importantly, I was surrounded by people who chose to be there. Claire tucked the torn papers into her bouquet. We'll deal with their legal threats later. Right now, you have a man to marry. Marcus pulled me close, whispering in my ear. They think they've won, but look around. You haven't lost a family. You've gained one that actually deserves you. Pastor Williams, composing himself, raised his Bible again. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness something powerful, not just a union of 2 people, but the creation of a new family born from choice rather than chance, from love rather than obligation. As he began the ceremony properly, my phone buzzed one last time. Without looking, I handed it to Claire. Whatever new cruelty my family had devised could wait. I was done giving them power over my happiness. Marcus was right. They thought they'd orchestrated my destruction, but they'd actually orchestrated my liberation. Every empty seat they'd left was now filled with someone who wanted to be there. Every cruel message they'd sent had been countered by genuine love from his family. Do you, Alysia, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Pastor Williams asked when we reached the vows. I looked at Marcus, then at the congregation that had literally crossed over to support me, then back at the man who'd never wavered in his love. I absolutely do, I said, my voice ringing clear and strong through the sanctuary. My family had given me an unexpected gift. They'd shown me exactly who they were, freeing me to build a life without their poison. And as Marcus slipped the ring onto my finger, I realized I wasn't losing anything that mattered. I was gaining everything I'd ever really wanted: a partner who loved me and a family who chose me. The empty church had become full, just not in the way anyone had expected. Pastor Williams smiled gently at me, the ceremony moving into the exchange of vows. I reached into my dress pocket for the carefully crafted words I'd written weeks ago, full of traditional promises and sweet sentiments. But as I unfolded the paper, something inside me shifted. Those words belonged to a different bride, one who still believed blood meant loyalty, who still craved approval from people incapable of giving it. I looked at the paper, then at Marcus, then crumpled it into a ball. "Alysia," Pastor Williams prompted gently. "I need to say something different." I announced, my voice carrying through the sanctuary. The vows I wrote were for a woman who still thought she needed her birth family's permission to be happy. That woman doesn't exist anymore. Marcus's eyes widened, but he nodded encouragingly. Behind him, his brother pulled out his phone to record whatever was about to happen. Marcus Chen. I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I stand before you today not as someone's daughter, sister, or employee, but as myself, completely unapologetically myself." The congregation leaned forward, sensing something extraordinary was happening. "You met me when I was drowning in obligation, killing myself for people who saw me as a resource to exploit. You watched me work 18-hour days for a family who wouldn't work 18 minutes for me. You held me through every cruel word, every manipulative game, every soul-crushing betrayal." My voice cracked, but I pushed through. "When they told me I was worthless without their name, you showed me my own worth. When they said no one could love someone who chose teaching over profit, you loved me harder. When they tried to break us apart with lies and sabotage, you stood firm as a mountain." Tears flowed freely down my cheeks now, but I didn't care. "So here are my real vows to you, Marcus. I vow to never again put blood before love. I vow to recognize manipulation disguised as family obligation. I vow to build our life on truth, kindness, and mutual respect, not on status or wealth or others' approval." I took a shaky breath, feeling years of weight lifting from my shoulders. "I vow to teach our future children that family is earned through actions not assigned by genetics. I vow to fill our home with chosen family who celebrate our joy rather than sabotage it." The sanctuary was silent except for scattered sniffles. Diana was openly sobbing. Robert had his arm around her, his own eyes suspiciously wet. "I vow to wake up every morning grateful that you saw through my family's facade to find me underneath. I vow to be your partner, your equal, your best friend, and your fiercest protector. I vow to choose you every day, just as you chose me, when everyone else walked away." I reached for his hands, feeling them tremble in mine. "And Marcus, I vow this above all else. I will never let anyone blood-related or not make you feel like you're not enough. You're not just enough. You're everything. You're my family, my future, my home." My voice rang clear through the final words. "I don't need their approval, their money, or their name. All I need is you and this beautiful family that chose to stand with us today. That's my vow, my promise, my revolution." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Marcus cleared his throat, tears streaming down his face. He pulled out his own prepared vows and, following my lead, tore them in half. "Well," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I guess I need to match that." Nervous laughter rippled through the congregation. "Alysia Richmond." He began, "I fell in love with you the day I watched you mediate a dispute between two kindergartners over a broken crayon. You knelt down to their level, listened to both sides, and helped them find a solution that made everyone happy. That night, I told my mother I'd met my future wife." I bit my lip, remembering that day at the school where we'd met during a charity event. "But I fell in love with your strength the day you stood up to your father in that restaurant, defending my profession with more passion than I'd ever defended it myself. I fell in love with your resilience every time your family knocked you down and you got back up. I fell in love with your heart when you kept hoping they'd change, kept giving them chances they didn't deserve. His grip on my hands tightened. "So here are my vows to you. I vow to be the family you should have had all along. I vow to celebrate your achievements without jealousy, support your dreams without conditions, and love you without manipulation." His voice grew fierce. "I vow to stand between you and anyone who tries to dim your light, whether they share your DNA or not. I vow to remind you every day that you are worthy of love, respect, and joy, especially on the days when they try to make you forget. I vow to build a life with you based on genuine connection, not transactions. I vow to show our children that real men support strong women, that teachers can be heroes, and that wealth means nothing without kindness." He paused, composing himself. "I vow to never make you choose between me and anything else you love, because real love multiplies, it doesn't divide. I vow to be your safe harbor when storms come, and they will come, because cowards like your family always strike from the shadows." The congregation gasped at his directness, but Marcus wasn't finished. "But mostly, Alysia, I vow to help you heal. Every day, in small ways and large, I'll work to undo the damage they've done. When you doubt yourself, I'll be your mirror. When you feel alone, I'll be your reminder that you're surrounded by love. When they inevitably try to hurt you again, because we both know they will, I'll be your shield." He lifted our joined hands, his voice ringing with conviction. "You're not losing a family today. You're gaining one that actually knows how to love. My parents, my siblings, my cousins, my friends, they're all yours now. We choose you, Alysia Richmond, exactly as you are." The emotion in the room was palpable. His cousin Alex shouted, "Hell yes," breaking the sacred tension. Others began applauding the sound building until the entire congregation was on their feet. Pastor Williams wiped his own eyes, clearly moved. "In 30 years of ministry, I've never witnessed vows more powerful or more needed. These aren't just promises between two people, but a declaration of independence from toxic patterns and a commitment to building something better." He raised his hands for quiet. "Does anyone here support these vows?" The response was deafening. "We do," echoed from every filled pew, Marcus's family claiming me with their voices, just as they'd claimed me with their presence. Sarah jumped up again. "Can we make this official?" "Like legally. We want Alysia in this family forever." Laughter mixed with tears as Pastor Williams continued the ceremony. But something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was exactly what I'd called it, a revolution, a complete rejection of everything my birth family represented, and an embrace of something real. As we exchanged rings, Marcus whispered, "Your family thought they were punishing you by not showing up. Instead, they gave us the space to speak our truth." He was right. In trying to break me, they'd instead broken my last chains to them. And as Pastor Williams pronounced us husband and wife, I realized I wasn't mourning those empty pews anymore. I was grateful for them. They'd shown everyone exactly where I came from and, more importantly, where I was going. Marcus kissed me as the congregation erupted in celebration, and in that moment I knew my real life was finally beginning. The Hawaiian sunrise painted our hotel room in shades of gold and coral, a cruel irony considering my family was just 2 islands away on Maui. Marcus and I had chosen Kauai for our honeymoon, not knowing about their twisted plans. Now the proximity felt like another calculated insult, them flaunting their togetherness while we began our marriage in the shadow of their betrayal. "You've been staring at that laptop for an hour," Marcus said softly, setting a cup of coffee on the desk beside me. "We're supposed to be hiking to Waimea Canyon today." "I know, I gestured helplessly at the screen. "Amy sent me something, said I needed to see it immediately." After our wedding, I'd tried to disconnect completely. We'd spent 3 blissful days exploring beaches and waterfalls, letting the Pacific wash away the poison of my family's actions. But real life has a way of intruding on paradise, and Amy's encrypted message had been marked urgent. "What is it?" Marcus pulled up a chair beside me. Everything, I whispered. She gave me access to a shared drive she's been maintaining. Look at this. The first folder was labeled The Plan and dated 18 months ago. Inside were email chains between my siblings discussing Project Liberation, their code name for systematically removing me from the company and family. Brad's initial message was chilling in its casualness. Dad's getting older. If we don't act soon, Alysia will position herself as successor. I've been thinking, what if we could make her position untenable, force her to choose between the company and something else she values? Jessica had replied within minutes. Her weakness has always been wanting love. Find her someone inappropriate, let her fall, then make her choose. She'll pick romance every time. She's that predictable. Oh my God, Marcus breathed. Are they saying what I think they're saying? I clicked on the next email, my hands shaking. Tyler had written, I know someone who knows someone at the school district. Teachers are perfect targets, noble but poor. We could arrange for her to meet one at that charity thing Dad's making her organize. They didn't arrange for us to meet, Marcus said firmly. That was real. What we have is real. I know, I said, but my voice shook. The violation of discovering how long they'd been planning how calculated every move had been made me feel sick. The emails got worse. Detailed discussions about which vendors to target, how to hack my account scripts for the lies they'd tell. Brad had created a spreadsheet tracking my emotional state, marking vulnerability windows where they could strike hardest. Christmas 2022, grandfather's death anniversary. She'll be sensitive. March 2023, failed promotion opportunity, prime for manipulation. June 2024, wedding date, maximum impact potential. Every cruel act had been planned, discussed, refined. They'd held actual meetings about how to destroy me, taking minutes like it was legitimate business. There's more, I said, clicking on a folder labeled Financial. The documents inside made Marcus curse creatively. My family had been embezzling from Richmond Logistics for years, using my access codes and authority to hide their theft. Every bonus I'd earned but never received, every profit margin that seemed slightly off it all, made sense now. They stole nearly $2 million. I calculated scrolling through transaction records and made it look like I authorized it all. That's why they needed you out, Marcus realized. You were getting too close to discovering it. Another folder held correspondence with Stillwater Shipping, our biggest competitor. My father and Brad had been in negotiations to sell them proprietary information client lists, even employee contracts. The deal was worth millions, but only if they could guarantee I wouldn't interfere. Your termination was a condition of the sale, Marcus read from one email. They literally sold you out. I found myself laughing a bitter sound that worried Marcus. All this time, I thought I wasn't good enough for them, but they were terrified of me. Every move they made was because they knew I was better than them. The final folder was labeled Inheritance, and its contents stopped my heart. There were scanned copies of my grandmother's original will, the one I'd been searching for. She'd left me everything just as I'd remembered. But there were also documents showing how my parents had her declared incompetent months before her Alzheimer's diagnosis was official, allowing them to create a new will. This is fraud, Marcus said. Criminal fraud. Your grandmother wasn't incompetent when they filed these papers. Look at the dates she was still serving on the hospital board. But the last document was the most shocking. An email from my mother to a private investigator dated 6 months ago. Find out everything about Alysia's relationship. I need leverage for the June operation. The investigator's report was thorough but found nothing damaging. Marcus was exactly who he appeared to be, a dedicated teacher with a clean record who genuinely loved me. My mother's response was telling, then we create the problems. A good lie is better than a boring truth. Your Aunt Martha was right, Marcus said suddenly. Remember what she said at the wedding. She's been waiting for you to break free. She knew all of this. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Martha had given me her number at the reception, writing it on a napkin with the words, "When you're ready to fight back." Should I call her? Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. But first download everything. Every file, every email, every document. Amy took a huge risk sending this. As I created backup saving files to multiple drives, more pieces clicked into place. Tyler's sudden interest in learning the business had been him gathering passwords. Jessica's social media stalking had been reconnaissance for their psychological warfare. Brad's golf course deals had been cover for meetings with competitors. "They're not a family," I said as the final file transferred. "They're a criminal organization that happens to share DNA." Marcus pulled me away from the laptop, holding me as the full weight of the revelations crashed over me. "How do you feel?" "Free," I said, surprising myself with the truth. All my life, I've tied myself in knots trying to understand why they didn't love me, why I was never enough. But it was never about me. I was just an obstacle to their greed. "So what do we do now?" I looked out at the Pacific Ocean, its endless blue, reminding me that the world was so much bigger than the toxic bubble I'd grown up in. My family thought they'd won by exiling me, but they'd actually given me the evidence to destroy them. Now, I stood up, pulling on hiking clothes. Now we go see that canyon. We enjoy our honeymoon. We build our life together. And then I call Martha. I contact the FBI about the embezzlement. I hire lawyers about the inheritance fraud. I become the nightmare they were so afraid of that they had to destroy me first. Marcus smiled, the fierce pride in his eyes warming me more than the Hawaiian sun. They created their own worst enemy. They did. I agreed, saving one last file, a photo from their Maui celebration. My entire family smiling and toasting their victory, unaware that their betrayed daughter had just been handed every weapon needed to bring them down. "Ready for that hike?" Marcus asked, holding out his hand. I shut the laptop, leaving the ugliness behind for now. "Ready for anything with you?" As we left for Waimea Canyon, I felt lighter than I had in years. My family's cruelty had been meant to break me. Instead, it had revealed their crimes, their fears, and their weaknesses. They thought they'd planned the perfect betrayal. They had no idea they'd actually planned their own downfall. 2 weeks after returning from our honeymoon, I sat in Aunt Martha's downtown Seattle office, surrounded by bankers' boxes and legal documents. Martha Richmond Winters was everything my father despised: independent, successful, without the family company, and utterly uninterested in his approval. She'd built her own logistics empire, Phoenix International, from scratch after my father forced her out 20 years ago. "I've been waiting for this day since you were 10 years old," Martha said, pouring coffee from an elegant silver service. "Watching Richard destroy everything good that came near him, starting with his own sister." Marcus sat beside me, reviewing contracts while I absorbed the magnitude of what Martha had compiled. 2 decades of evidence meticulously cataloged, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Why didn't you act sooner?" I asked. "Because you had to see them for yourself," Martha replied. "If I'd intervened while you still hoped for their love, you'd have resented me. They had to show you their true nature." She was right. Even 6 months ago, I would have defended them, made excuses, believed their lies over documented truth. Now, armed with Amy's files and my own experience, I saw everything clearly. "First things first," Martha said, spreading papers across her conference table. "We need to protect you from their fraud. Every embezzled dollar has your electronic signature. We need to establish that you were unaware and build a timeline of their deception." She'd already assembled a team: forensic accountants, corporate lawyers, and criminal prosecutors. The lead attorney, David Kim, had a reputation for dismantling white-collar crime. "The FBI has been building a case against Richmond Logistics for 2 years," David revealed. "Your testimony could be the key to everything, but we need to move carefully. Your father has connections." Over the next 4 hours, we constructed our strategy. First, remove my name from every corporate document still linking me to Richmond Logistics. Second, freeze all accounts where my access codes had been compromised. Third, document everything before they could destroy evidence. I'll need your help accessing the systems, I told Martha. They revoked my credentials, but I know the backup protocols. Already handled, she smiled, sliding a laptop across the table. Amy isn't the only Richmond employee who's been waiting for justice. You'd be surprised how many people want to see your family fall. The laptop showed administrator access to Richmond systems. Tom from accounting had provided his credentials. Linda from HR had shared password histories. Even my father's secretary, Margaret, who'd worked there 30 years, had contributed building access codes. They terrorized everyone, Martha explained. Employees, vendors, competitors. You were just the most visible victim. Now they all want payback. Working methodically, I began extracting years of data. Every transaction, every communication, every altered document. The embezzlement was worse than I'd thought, exceeding $3 million. But more damning was the corporate espionage selling trade secrets that had cost dozens of people their jobs. Look at this. Marcus pointed to a series of transfers. They moved money the morning of your wedding. While you were getting ready, they were emptying accounts. The cruelty of the timing hit fresh. While Diana helped me with my veil, my mother had been transferring my project bonuses to offshore accounts. While Sarah fixed my makeup, Brad had been changing security protocols to lock me out permanently. There's something else, David said quietly. We've been monitoring communications since you returned from Hawaii. Your family knows you have evidence. They're trying to discredit you. He showed us intercepted emails where Jessica had created a fake psychiatric history for me, complete with forged therapy notes suggesting instability. Brad had contacted my former colleagues, spinning tales of my mental breakdown after being rightfully terminated. They're laying groundwork to claim you're delusional, Martha said grimly. If you come forward, they'll say you're a disgruntled ex-employee making false accusations out of spite. Then we need to act fast, I decided, before their narrative takes hold. The next 3 days blurred together. I worked 18-hour days, but different from before. This wasn't servitude to ungrateful family. This was revolution. Every document I processed, every crime I uncovered, loosened their grip on my life. Marcus never left my side, bringing meals, reviewing documents, offering support when the emotional weight threatened to crush me. Remember, he'd say during the darkest moments, they did this to themselves. You're just bringing truth to light. On the 4th day, we were ready. David had prepared FBI testimony. Martha had documentation proving my grandmother's mental competence when they'd had her declared incompetent. The forensic accountants had traced every stolen penny. One more thing, Martha said, producing a sealed envelope. Your grandmother gave this to me 20 years ago with instructions to give it to you when you were ready to fight. Inside was a letter in my grandmother's elegant script. My dearest Alysia, if you're reading this, you've finally seen what I've always known. This family's greed will consume everything good unless someone stops them. I chose you not because you're the smartest or strongest, but because you're the only one with a heart they couldn't corrupt. The enclosed key opens a safety deposit box at First National. Everything you need is there. Fight smart, fight hard, but don't let them steal your humanity in the process. All my love, grandmother. The key felt heavy in my palm, weighted with possibility and responsibility. That afternoon, we visited First National Bank. The safety deposit box contained everything: original wills, property deeds, documentation of my grandfather's true wishes for the company, even recordings of family meetings where they'd discussed circumventing his legacy. She knew. I whispered, listening to my father on tape, dismissing his own father's vision. She knew everything and planned for this moment. Your grandmother was brilliant, Martha agreed. She couldn't fight them while alive without destroying you in the crossfire, so she set you up to win after she was gone. The final piece fell into place that evening. The FBI officially requested my cooperation. Stillwater Shipping, facing their own investigation, had agreed to testify about my family's corporate espionage. The IRS had opened an audit based on the embezzlement evidence. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus asked as we prepared to submit everything. "Once we do this, there's no going back." I thought about the empty church pews, the mocking photos from Maui, the years of manipulation disguised as love. Then I thought about Diana's warm hugs, Sarah's fierce loyalty, and the chosen family who'd filled those abandoned seats. "I've never been more ready," I said, hitting send on the email that would change everything. Within hours, the first dominoes began falling. Corporate accounts frozen, travel restrictions imposed, federal agents arriving at Richmond Logistics with warrants. My phone exploded with calls and texts I didn't answer. Brad's number, Jessica's, Tyler's, even my mother's. They'd spent years teaching me I didn't matter. Now they were learning exactly how much I'd mattered all along. "What's next?" Marcus asked as we watched the sun set from Martha's office. "Now we wait," I said, feeling strangely calm. "They'll come to me probably individually, definitely desperate. They'll try every manipulation tactic they know." Martha smiled shark-like and satisfied. "Let them come. You're not the scared girl seeking approval anymore. You're their reckoning." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "We need to talk, now." I showed it to Marcus and Martha, then deleted it without responding. They'd trained me well in the art of strategic silence. The difference was, now I was using their weapons against them. The revolution had begun and their empire was already crumbling. 7 days after submitting evidence to the authorities, I woke to pounding on our condo door at 6 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw my father, his usually immaculate appearance destroyed. His gray hair stuck up at odd angles, his designer suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it, his face the color of overcooked beets. "I know you're in there," he bellowed, his voice carrying through the building. "Open this door right now, Alysia. We need to talk." Marcus appeared beside me, phone already recording. "Should I call the police?" "Not yet," I said, oddly calm. "Let him exhaust himself first." The pounding intensified. "Do you have any idea what you've done? They've frozen everything. My accounts, the company assets, everything. Your mother can't even access her credit cards." I made coffee the normal morning routine, a stark contrast to his meltdown. Through the door, I could hear him cycling through the emotional manipulation playbook I knew by heart. First came anger. "You ungrateful brat, after everything we've done for you." Then bargaining. "If you recant your testimony, we can work this out. I'll even put your name back on the company papers." Followed by threats. "You think you've won? I have lawyers who will destroy you. Mental instability runs in the family, you know. Ask your grandmother." The mention of my grandmother finally moved me. I opened the door, staying behind the chain coffee mug in hand like a shield. "Did you just threaten me with the grandmother you had falsely declared incompetent?" My voice was steady, conversational even. His bloodshot eyes widened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Actually, I do. I have the medical records showing she was still lecturing at the university when you filed those papers. I have the original will you tried to destroy. I even have recordings of you bragging about manipulating her." The color drained from his face. "You're lying." "Am I?" I took a sip of coffee, maintaining eye contact. "Tell me, Dad, did you really think Brad was competent enough to run Richmond Logistics, the man who lost $500,000 on that golf course deal last year? How did you—" "Or Jessica, whose main skill is spending money she didn't earn, Tyler, who's never finished anything in his life except hacking into systems he shouldn't access." Each word hit like a physical blow. He staggered back from the door. "You gave everything to them and cast me out," I continued. "Now you get to watch them try to save your empire. Good luck with that." "Alysia, please." His voice cracked, the mighty Richard Richmond reduced to begging. "You're still my daughter." "No," I said simply. "I'm not. You made that very clear in Maui. I'm just the ex-employee who knows where all the bodies are buried." "What do you want?" Desperation leaked from every word. Money. The company name your price. I want you to leave. If I apologize, leave, now, or I call the police and report harassment. Your choice. He stood there for a long moment, searching for the daughter he'd trained to seek his approval. That girl was gone, replaced by someone who'd found her worth beyond his judgment. This isn't over, he said finally. You're right, I agreed. It's just beginning. Oh, and Dad, you might want to check on Brad. I heard Stillwater Shipping is being very cooperative with investigators. I closed the door on his shocked face, engaging all 3 locks with satisfying clicks. That was incredible, Marcus breathed. You didn't even raise your voice. He doesn't deserve my emotions anymore, I said, surprised to find it was true. The family assault continued throughout the week. Jessica appeared at my gym, mascara running as she pleaded about her frozen trust fund. Tyler sent hundreds of texts alternating between apologies and threats to release compromising photos that didn't exist. My mother left voicemails weeping about family loyalty while simultaneously calling me vindictive and unstable. But the real entertainment came from watching their empire crumble in real time. Amy, still embedded at Richmond Logistics, provided updates like a war correspondent. Brad tried to call an emergency board meeting, she reported gleefully. No one showed up. Then he attempted to access the reserves, but you'd already frozen those accounts. He actually cried Alysia in front of everyone. The employees they'd terrorized for years were enjoying the show. Tom from accounting had started a betting pool on which Richmond would be arrested first. Linda from HR was openly job hunting during work hours. The entire sales team had submitted resignations effective the moment their bonuses cleared. It's poetic justice, Amy said. They treated everyone like disposable assets. Now they're learning what happens when assets dispose of themselves. On day 10, local news picked up the story. Richmond Logistics under federal investigation scrolled across the morning broadcast. The anchor detailed allegations of embezzlement, corporate espionage, and fraud spanning decades. My phone rang constantly with reporters seeking comments. Following David Kim's advice, I stayed silent publicly while the legal process unfolded. But privately, each revelation felt like another chain breaking. Jessica cracked first. She appeared on social media posting a tearful video claiming she'd been manipulated by our parents and brothers. She threw everyone under the bus, desperate to save herself, not realizing her posts were providing more evidence for prosecutors. Tyler tried hacking into my accounts again, apparently forgetting that FBI cybercrime units were monitoring all electronic activity. He was arrested at a coffee shop laptop open in the middle of attempting to transfer money from frozen accounts. Brad took a different approach. He showed up at Marcus's school with a sob story about family reconciliation, trying to manipulate my husband into convincing me to drop charges. The principal had him escorted off property and banned from campus. Did he really think that would work? Marcus asked over dinner. He's desperate, I said. They all are. For the first time in their lives, they're facing consequences they can't buy or manipulate their way out of. The sweetest vindication came from an unexpected source. Margaret, my father's secretary, called personally. I wanted you to know, she said carefully, that certain documents your father thought were destroyed have been preserved, including recordings of meetings where he discussed framing you for the embezzlement. Margaret, thank you. Why are you telling me this? Because you were the only Richmond who ever treated me like a human being. 30 years I've worked there. You're the only one who knew my grandchildren's names. Her words hit harder than any family attack. While I'd been desperately seeking love from people incapable of giving it, I'd been surrounded by connections I'd barely noticed. 2 weeks after that first door-pounding incident, Martha called with news. The FBI is ready to move. Arrest tomorrow morning. They want you prepared for media attention. That night I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, but from a strange sense of completion. The scared girl who'd stood in an empty church was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned the difference between family and relatives, between love and manipulation. No matter what happens tomorrow, Marcus said, holding me close, I'm proud of you. You didn't let them break you, and you didn't become them in fighting back." He was right. Throughout everything, I'd stayed truthful. I'd used their own crimes against them, not fabricated new ones. I'd maintained my integrity while dismantling their corruption. As dawn broke, I stood at our window overlooking Elliott Bay. Somewhere across the city, my family was waking to their last day of freedom. They'd orchestrated my wedding day betrayal, thinking it would be my lowest point. Instead, they'd given me the push I needed to soar. The arrests happened simultaneously at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I watched from our living room as the local news covered it, live helicopters circling the family compound in Bellevue. FBI agents led my father out in handcuffs, his aristocratic bearing finally shattered. Brad tried to run tackled on his own manicured lawn in full view of the cameras. Even from the aerial footage, you could see his perfect veneer crack as reality hit. Tyler had been arrested days earlier for his hacking attempts, already in custody when they came for the others. But it was Jessica's arrest that made headlines. The social media influencer live streaming her own federal custody situation until agents confiscated her phone. The internet had a field day with her tearful, mascara-streaked mugshot. My mother, however, was nowhere to be found. Patricia Richmond is currently wanted for questioning, the anchor reported. Sources indicate she may have fled the jurisdiction after learning of the impending arrests. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, a video file. Against my better instincts, I opened it. My mother's face filled the screen, but she looked nothing like the polished society matron I'd known. Her usually perfect hair hung limp, her makeup, absent her eyes, wild with something between fury and madness. "You think you've won," she hissed at the camera. "You've destroyed your own family. Your father built an empire and you tore it down out of spite. Because what we didn't coddle you enough, we pushed you to be extraordinary." Marcus watched over my shoulder as she continued her rant. "I know things about you, Alysia. Things that will ruin your perfect little teacher marriage. Things that will make everyone see what you really are, a vindictive, mentally unstable woman who couldn't handle being told no." "Is she seriously threatening you while being a fugitive?" Marcus asked incredulously. The video continued. "I have documents, psychiatric evaluations from when you were young. That therapist we sent you to after your grandfather died, I kept everything. Your obsessive tendencies, your inability to form normal attachments, your pathological need for approval." I started laughing. Marcus looked at me with concern, but I couldn't stop. "She's talking about Dr. Brennan," I explained through my laughter. "I was 12. My grandfather had just died and I was sad. That's it. 3 sessions of grief counseling that she's trying to spin into mental illness." The video wasn't done. "I'll release everything unless you fix this. Call off your dogs. Tell them you lied. Save your family or I'll destroy you." "She really doesn't get it," Marcus marveled. "She's still trying to manipulate you." "Send it to David," I said, forwarding the file to our lawyer. "She just added witness intimidation to her charges." Within hours, my mother's threat video was evidence in federal court, but she'd opened floodgates she couldn't close. My siblings facing serious prison time turned on each other with spectacular viciousness. Brad's lawyer released a statement claiming Jessica had masterminded the embezzlement that he'd been coerced into participating. Jessica's attorney countered that Brad had threatened her into compliance, holding her trust fund hostage. Tyler from his jail cell gave an interview claiming both older siblings had corrupted him, that he was just a kid following their lead. "They're devouring each other," Martha observed over lunch. "Exactly as we predicted. No honor among thieves, especially when those thieves are Richmonds." The media circus intensified when employees started talking. Tom from accounting gave an interview detailing years of Brad's incompetence covered up by staff. Linda from HR revealed Jessica's harassment of female employees she viewed as competition. The IT department shared Tyler's numerous attempts to spy on coworkers through illegally accessed systems. But the most damaging testimony came from unexpected sources. Clients Brad had insulted, vendors Jessica had cheated, competitors my father had tried to destroy, All of them emerged with stories, lawsuits, and evidence of Richmond corruption. "Your family made enemies everywhere," David told me. "We're getting cooperation from people I didn't even know existed. 20 years of burned bridges are coming home to roost." 3 days after the arrests, my mother was caught at the Canadian border using a fake ID. The footage of her being dragged from a rental car screaming about persecution and injustice went viral within hours. That evening, she called from custody. I shouldn't have answered, but curiosity won. "Are you happy now?" Her voice was raw, stripped of its usual calculated tone. "You've destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything, Mother. I simply stopped enabling your crimes. We gave you everything. The best schools, the best opportunities. You gave me a job with no pay credit for work I did alone and emotional abuse disguised as motivation. Then you fired me for falling in love with someone you deemed unworthy. That teacher poisoned you against us." "No," I said firmly. "You poisoned yourselves. Marcus just helped me see the truth. I'm your mother." "Biologically, yes, but mothers don't steal from their daughters. They don't sabotage their weddings or frame them for embezzlement. They don't flee to Canada when their crimes catch up." The silence stretched between us, years of dysfunction condensing into this moment. "I'll testify against all of them," she said suddenly. "Your father, your brothers, even Jessica. I have evidence they haven't found. I'll give it all to you if you help me." There it was. Even facing federal prison, she was scheming ready to sacrifice everyone to save herself. "Goodbye, Patricia," I said, using her first name deliberately. "Good luck with your lawyers." "Don't you dare hang up on me. I am your mother. You owe me." I ended the call, blocking the number. Whatever she thought I owed her had been paid in full through years of thankless service. The next morning brought more chaos. Brad and Jessica's lawyers filed mutual restraining orders against each other after a physical altercation in the courthouse. Tyler posted bail only to be immediately rearrested for violating his computer ban. My father suffered what his lawyer called a stress-induced cardiac event, though nurses at the hospital reported he seemed fine until he learned his assets would remain frozen. "They're imploding faster than even I expected," Martha said, reviewing the latest updates. "Your grandmother would be so proud. She always said their greed would be their downfall." The family destruction was complete when their society friends abandoned them. The country club revoked their memberships. The charity boards demanded their resignations. The business community that had once courted Richmond favor now distanced themselves from the toxic brand. Amy sent a photo from the Richmond Logistics Building employees celebrating in the break room, toasting with champagne someone had hidden for just this occasion. The caption read, "The tyrants have fallen. Long live the free." A week later, plea negotiations began. Faced with overwhelming evidence and no family loyalty to protect them, each Richmond tried to cut the best deal for themselves. Brad offered to testify against our father. Jessica agreed to detail the embezzlement scheme. Tyler provided evidence of the cyber crimes. Our parents, realizing their children had turned state's evidence, reciprocated by exposing every illegal act their offspring had committed. "It's a circular firing squad," David reported. "They're each providing evidence against the others, not realizing they're all going down together." I thought I'd feel satisfaction watching them destroy each other. Instead, I felt empty. Not sad, not happy, just tired of the whole toxic mess. These people had consumed so much of my energy for so long, and now they were finally someone else's problem. "You okay?" Marcus asked, finding me on our balcony watching the sunset. "Yeah," I said, meaning it. "I'm just ready for this to be over. Ready to stop thinking about them, talking about them, dealing with their chaos." "Soon," he promised. "Once they're sentenced, we can close this chapter forever." As if in response, my phone buzzed with one final message from Jessica sent before her lawyer confiscated her devices. "I hope you're happy. You won." I deleted it without responding. She still didn't understand. This was never about winning. It was about breaking free. And in that, I hadn't just won. I'd escaped. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse wearing the same navy dress I'd worn to that disastrous engagement dinner. It seemed fitting to bookend this chapter with the outfit that had once been stained with Jessica's deliberately spilled wine. Now it represented my transformation from victim to victor. The courtroom was packed with media, former employees, and curiosity seekers drawn to the spectacular fall of Seattle's once powerful Richmond dynasty. I sat between Marcus and Martha David Kim, flanking our other side as lead prosecutor, prepared to call me as their star witness. My family entered in shackles, a sight that should have been shocking but felt inevitable. They wore identical gray detention uniforms, their designer facades stripped away. My father had aged a decade. In 6 months, his commanding presence reduced to a hollow shell. Brad's golden boy charm had curdled into bitter sneers. Jessica looked gaunt, her influencer glow extinguished. Tyler appeared smallest of all, the baby of the family, finally facing adult consequences. My mother entered last, her wrists chained to her waist. She'd tried to maintain her appearance even in custody, but federal detention didn't accommodate her beauty routines. Gray roots showed through her dyed hair, and without her armor of makeup and designer clothes, she looked frighteningly ordinary. The prosecution calls Alysia Chen to the stand. Using my married name in that courtroom felt like claiming new ground. I walked to the witness box with steady steps, raising my right hand to swear an oath to the truth. Behind me, I felt the weight of their stares, but ahead lay freedom. The prosecutor, James Harrison, began with simple questions about my role at Richmond Logistics. I detailed my responsibilities, the hours worked, the contracts, negotiated the growth I'd driven. The defense tried to object, claiming irrelevance, but Harrison was building a foundation. During your 7 years running daily operations, what was your official compensation? I received no salary, I stated clearly. I was told my work was contributing to my future ownership stake, that I was earning my inheritance through service to the family company. And did you receive this ownership stake? No, I discovered my name appeared on no ownership documents despite verbal promises from my father. Harrison presented exhibit after exhibit emails where I'd begged for basic recognition memos, showing my contributions, financial records, proving the company's success directly correlated with my involvement. The picture he painted was devastating in its clarity. Now, Ms. Chen, please tell the court about June 15th of last year. I took a breath, meeting my mother's eyes across the courtroom. That was my wedding day. The day my entire family chose to abandon me for a reunion in Maui, sending cruel messages as I stood in an empty church. Objection, my father's lawyer shouted. Emotional manipulation of the jury. Overruled, the judge said firmly. The witness is stating facts relevant to the timeline. I continued detailing the orchestrated cruelty, the systematic sabotage, the financial threats that arrived during my ceremony. Harrison displayed the photos they'd posted, the timestamps, showing their calculated timing. Several jurors looked disgusted. Following your wedding, what did you discover about Richmond Logistics' financial status? This was the meat of the prosecution. I walked through each discovered crime, my voice steady as I detailed embezzlement, fraud, corporate espionage. Amy's evidence, my grandmother's documents, and the FBI's investigation had created an undeniable paper trail. The defense will claim you're a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge, Harrison warned during prep. Stay calm, stick to facts, let the evidence speak. Sure enough, during cross-examination, Brad's lawyer attacked my credibility. Isn't it true you felt entitled to run Richmond Logistics? I felt entitled to fair compensation for my work, I replied evenly. You were angry about being terminated. I was surprised to be fired for refusing to end my engagement, yes. So you fabricated these allegations out of spite. I reported evidence of financial crimes I discovered. The FBI corroborated everything independently. Jessica's attorney tried a different approach, painting me as mentally unstable. She referenced the grief counseling from my childhood, spinning it into something sinister. You've been under psychiatric care multiple times. I saw a grief counselor for 3 sessions when I was 12 after my grandfather died. That's the extent of my mental health treatment. But your mother has concerns about your stability. My mother fled to Canada to avoid federal arrest. I'd question her judgment on anyone's stability. Muffled laughter rippled through the gallery. The judge called for order, but I caught his slight smirk. Tyler's lawyer, perhaps wisest of all, barely cross-examined me. His client had already pled guilty to cyber crimes in exchange for a lighter sentence. My testimony was just confirming what Tyler had already admitted. My parents' shared attorney, however, came out swinging. You stand to inherit millions if your family is convicted correct. I stand to recover what was stolen from my grandmother's estate, yes. So you have financial motivation to see them imprisoned. They have financial motivation to have committed these crimes in the first place. I'm just seeking justice and restoration of what was legally mine. You felt overlooked, underappreciated. I was overlooked and underappreciated. That's documented fact, not feeling. He tried for 2 hours to break me, to make me emotional, to paint me as the villain in their story. But I'd learned from the best manipulators in the business. Every trick he attempted I'd seen before. Every emotional button he pushed my family had already worn out. Finally, Harrison redirected. Ms. Chen, do you take any pleasure in testifying against your family today? I considered the question honestly. No, I take no pleasure in this. I wish they'd chosen differently. I wish they'd valued family over money, love over control. But they made their choices, and those choices have consequences. What do you hope comes from this trial? Justice for everyone they hurt, protection for future victims, and personally, freedom to live my life without their shadow. When I stepped down from the witness box, Marcus caught my hand briefly as I passed. That simple touch grounded me, reminding me why I'd fought this battle. The trial continued for 3 weeks. Witness after witness corroborated my testimony. Employees detailed years of abuse. Clients revealed bribes and threats. The FBI presented financial evidence so damning that even my family's expensive lawyers looked defeated. Martha testified about our grandmother's mental competence producing medical records that destroyed my parents' defense. David Kim methodically dismantled their legal arguments. Even some of their former society friends appeared distancing themselves while revealing damaging conversations. The most dramatic moment came when Amy took the stand. My former assistant had kept meticulous records, including recordings of Brad discussing the frame job. "Play the audio," Harrison instructed. Brad's voice filled the courtroom. "Once Alysia's gone, we pin the missing funds on her. She's too trusting to password protect everything properly. Tyler's already cloned her access codes." In the defendant's box, Brad went pale as his own words condemned him. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. As we waited in a courthouse cafe, Martha reflected on the journey. "Your grandmother always said the truth would come out eventually. She'd be so proud of your courage." "I don't feel courageous," I admitted. "I feel tired." "The two aren't mutually exclusive," Marcus said. "Heroes in stories are always brave and energetic. Real heroes are usually exhausted people doing what's necessary." When the verdict came, we filed back into the courtroom. My family sat rigid as the foreman stood. On the charge of embezzlement in the first degree, we find the defendant, Richard Richmond, guilty. On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant, Patricia Richmond, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, we find the defendant, Bradley Richmond, guilty. The litany continued. Guilty after guilty after guilty. Decades of crimes finally acknowledged, documented, punished. Jessica broke first, sobbing as her influencer dreams officially died. Tyler hung his head, perhaps finally understanding that actions have consequences. Brad's jaw clenched so tight I thought it might shatter. But it was my parents' reactions that struck deepest. My father's shoulders sagged with each guilty verdict, his empire officially in ruins. My mother stared at me across the courtroom, her expression cycling through rage, disbelief, and something that might have been regret if she were capable of such emotion. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month, but the damage was already done. Richmond Logistics was being dissolved, its assets liquidated to pay restitution. The family properties were seized. The reputation they'd killed themselves, building, was destroyed beyond repair. As we left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions I didn't answer. Marcus and Martha flanked me, creating a protective barrier against the chaos. "How does it feel?" one persistent journalist managed to ask. I paused at our car, considering. How did it feel to watch the family who'd tormented me face justice? To see their cruelty finally have consequences, to know that I'd stood up to them and won. "It feels like closure," I said finally, "and a new beginning." As we drove away from the courthouse, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see but the wreckage of people who'd chosen greed over love, control over connection. They'd had every opportunity to be a real family and thrown each chance away. Now they'd have years in federal prison to contemplate their choices, and I'd have a lifetime of freedom to build something better. 1 year after the trial, I stood in the gleaming conference room of Phoenix Chen, consulting the firm Martha and I had built from the ashes of Richmond Logistics. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the faces of 20 former Richmond employees who'd followed us to this new venture. Quarterly profits are up 37%. Tom announced his pride evident as he presented financial reports that bore no resemblance to the cooked books of our past. And that's with us paying everyone fairly and providing actual benefits. The room erupted in applause. These people had risked everything to leave the toxic Richmond environment and join our startup. Their faith was being rewarded with success my family never thought possible through ethical business practices. Amy, now our Chief Operations Officer, distributed bonus checks that reflected actual performance rather than favoritism. Linda had revolutionized our HR department, creating policies that protected rather than exploited employees. Even Margaret, my father's former secretary, had joined us as executive administrator, her 30 years of experience invaluable in building something better. Before we adjourned, Martha said, "Alysia has an announcement." I stood, my hand instinctively moving to my still flat stomach. Marcus and I are expecting. The baby's due in November. The celebration that followed was genuine, warm, everything workplace interactions at Richmond Logistics had never been. These people were more than employees. They'd become extended family bound by shared survival and mutual respect. Later, as I walked through our offices, I reflected on the year's transformation. My father was serving 12 years in federal prison, his empire reduced to cautionary tales in business schools. Brad got 8 years, his golden boy image forever tarnished. Jessica received 5 years, but would likely serve 3 with good behavior, her influencer dreams replaced by prison kitchen duties. Tyler, youngest and most cooperative, got 2 years and mandatory technology rehabilitation. My mother had fought longest maintaining innocence until presented with her own words on tape. She'd been sentenced to 10 years, her final courtroom statement, a masterclass in refusing accountability. Even facing a decade behind bars, she'd insisted everything was my fault for not being grateful enough. I'd visited them once 6 months after sentencing, not for closure or forgiveness, but to deliver documents Martha's lawyers had prepared. Using my grandmother's recovered will and the court's fraud findings, we'd successfully reclaimed everything they'd stolen. The family homes, the hidden accounts, the art and jewels they'd hoarded, while claiming poverty to avoid paying employees fairly. "You can't do this," my father had raged from behind reinforced glass. "That money is Richmond money." "It's restitution," I'd replied calmly. "Every penny will go to employees you cheated, vendors you stiffed, and charities that actually help people, rather than launder reputations." My mother had tried manipulation one last time. "Alysia, sweetheart, think of your future children. Do you want them visiting their grandparents in prison?" "My children will have grandparents," I'd assured her. "Marcus's parents who actually know how to love." That was the last time I'd seen them. Their letters went unopened, their calls unaccepted. Some bridges once burned, cleared land for better construction. Now, a year later, life had settled into rhythms of genuine happiness. Marcus had been promoted to vice principal, his natural leadership finally recognized. We'd bought a house in Ballard, nothing as ostentatious as the Richmond estates, but filled with warmth those mansions never possessed. Diana and Robert came for Sunday dinners, teaching me family recipes and sharing stories of Marcus's childhood. Sarah had become my closest friend, our weekly coffee dates a highlight. The Chen family had enveloped me completely, offering the unconditional love I'd spent 28 years seeking from people incapable of providing it. "Package for you," Amy interrupted my reminiscing, handing over a legal envelope. Inside were documents from the Federal Restitution Board. The Richmond assets had been fully liquidated with payments distributed to victims. The final tally was staggering: over $40 million in stolen wages, fraudulent contracts, and embezzled funds returned to rightful owners. But it was the attached note that made me smile. Written in shaky handwriting was a message from Gladys Morrison, the cleaning woman my family had fired without cause just before Christmas 3 years ago. The restitution check had allowed her to pay for her grandson's cancer treatment. "You gave us justice," she wrote. "But more than that, you gave us hope that standing up to bullies is worth it. Thank you for your courage." I tucked the letter into my desk drawer with dozens of others. Former employees cheated vendors, small business owners my family had tried to crush, all writing to express gratitude, not for the money, but for the vindication. "Ready to go." Marcus appeared in my doorway. "LeMay's class starts in an hour." I gathered my things, pausing to straighten a photo on my desk. It showed our wedding reception after the ceremony, when Marcus's family had surrounded us with so much joy it eclipsed the morning's pain. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was the business card Aunt Martha had given me that night. "When you're ready to build something real." We'd built something beyond real. We'd built something revolutionary, a company that proved success didn't require sacrifice of ethics, a family that showed love wasn't transactional, a life that demonstrated happiness came not from controlling others, but from lifting them up. The elevator carried us down to the parking garage where Marcus had already installed an elaborate car seat system, though the baby wouldn't need it for months. His overprotective preparation made me laugh, so different from my own childhood, where preparation meant scheming and protection meant manipulation. "What are you thinking about?" he asked as we drove toward the hospital. "How different everything is. How grateful I am that they showed me exactly who they were. If they'd been just a little less cruel, I might have spent my whole life seeking their approval. Instead, I get this." I gestured to my small bump, our car, the life we'd built. "I get real love, honest work, and a family that chose me." That evening after class, we stopped by the waterfront. The sunset painted Elliott Bay in shades of gold and crimson, beautiful and temporary like all perfect moments. Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind his hands, resting on our growing miracle. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. I thought about it honestly. Did I regret the years spent serving ungrateful relatives, the pain of their betrayal, the public humiliation of their abandonment? "No," I said finally. "Every moment led to this, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones." My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Family dinner Sunday. Mom's making her famous lasagna." "Tell her yes," I said, leaning into Marcus's warmth. "Tell her absolutely yes." As we stood there building our future one quiet moment at a time, I realized the truth. My family had given me an unexpected gift with their cruelty. They'd taught me exactly what not to do, who not to be, how not to love. Our child would grow up surrounded by chosen family ethical examples and unconditional love. They'd know their worth wasn't tied to performance or profit, but to their inherent humanity. They'd learn that real strength came from lifting others, not stepping on them. The Richmond legacy would die in federal prison, but the Chen legacy was just beginning, and it would be built on everything my birth family had scorned: kindness, integrity, and the radical idea that love multiplied rather than divided. As the sun set over the water, I felt my grandmother's presence, her approval warming me more than the fading light. She'd planted seeds of revolution in her will, in her letter, in her faith that one Richmond would choose differently. I'd made that choice, and in doing so, I'd discovered the greatest revenge wasn't destruction, but creation. Creating a business that thrived on ethics. Creating a family bound by choice. Creating a life that proved everything they'd believed was wrong. The empty church pews had been a gift-making room for the right people. Their abandonment had been liberation, freeing me to find real love. Their cruelty had been education, teaching me exactly who I refused to become. I was Alysia Chen, wife of Marcus' daughter-in-law to Diana and Robert's sister to Sarah, friend to many and soon-to-be mother. The Richmond name was a footnote in my story, a cautionary tale that led to triumph. And I'd never been happier to see it fade into irrelevance. 5 years had passed since that morning I stood in an empty church. Now I stood in my backyard watching 4-year-old Emma Chen chase bubbles, while her 2-year-old brother Daniel toddled after her, their laughter mixing with the sounds of our 4th of July gathering. The yard overflowed with chosen family. Diana and Robert manned the grill, playfully arguing about proper burger flipping technique. Sarah pushed her own kids on the swing set Marcus had spent 3 weekends assembling. Martha sat with our grandmother, yes, alive and sharp at 93, her fake death having been the ultimate test of character that only I had passed. She would have loved this, grandmother said, patting my hand as we watched Emma perform an impromptu dance recital. Your mother, I mean. The real Patricia before money poisoned her. She used to dance just like that. I'd learned to accept these glimpses of who my family might have been. Grandmother shared them occasionally, memories of children who'd chosen differently, who'd let greed consume their humanity. It no longer hurt to hear them. They were strangers to me now, characters in someone else's cautionary tale. Tom from accounting arrived with his famous potato salad, his husband carrying their newly adopted daughter. Linda brought her teenage sons, who immediately joined the soccer game Marcus was organizing. Amy appeared with her fiancé, their wedding plans a frequent topic of our lunch discussions. Auntie Les. Emma bounded over her face, painted with watermelon juice. Look what Grandma Diana taught me. She demonstrated a cartwheel that was more enthusiasm than technique, and I applauded like she'd won Olympic gold. This was what unconditional support looked like, celebrating effort over outcome, joy over perfection. My turn, Daniel insisted, attempting his own version that was essentially falling sideways with style. Beautiful baby, I assured him, scooping him up as he giggled. Margaret appeared at my elbow with lemonade. The prosecutor called, she said quietly. Brad's parole was denied again. Jessica gets out next month, but she's already violated the no-contact order by trying to email you. Forward it to the lawyers, I said, unbothered by ghosts who no longer haunted me. And then, let's not talk about them again today. It had become routine, these updates about people who shared my DNA but nothing else. My father remained in maximum security after trying to orchestrate fraud from inside. My mother had been transferred 3 times for manipulating other inmates. Tyler served his time quietly and disappeared upon release, perhaps the only one capable of learning. But they were footnotes, now cautionary tales I'd share with my children when they were old enough to understand that blood didn't equal family. Story time, Sarah called, and the children flocked to the blanket she'd spread under the apple tree. As she read about brave princesses and kind dragons, I found myself surrounded by former Richmond employees who'd become so much more. We'd built Phoenix Chen Consulting into one of Seattle's most respected firms, known for ethical practices and employee care. The Richmond Way had become a business school case study in how not to run a company, while our success proved that treating people well was profitable. Can you believe it's been 5 years? Marcus asked, joining me on the porch swing. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like a lifetime ago. Any word from... He trailed off, but I knew who he meant. Jessica gets out next month. Her lawyer sent another request for financial assistance. I forwarded it to the restitution fund for victims of Richmond Logistics. If she qualifies for aid under the same criteria as everyone else they hurt, she'll receive it." Marcus laughed. "Fair but firm, very you." "Mama!" Daniel ran over, clutching a dandelion bouquet. "For you." "Thank you, sweetheart." I accepted the weeds like they were rare orchids because in his eyes they were. This was wealth my family never understood. The riches of sticky kisses, crayon masterpieces, and unconditional trust. The treasure of being surrounded by people who chose to be here not because of obligation or opportunity, but because of love. As sunset approached, we gathered everyone for our annual tradition. Each person shared one thing they were grateful for from the past year. The responses ranged from new jobs to recovered health, from found love to simple survival. When my turn came, I stood with Daniel on my hip and Emma holding my hand. "I'm grateful for full rooms," I said simply. "For every seat at our table being filled with people who want to be here. For children who will never question if they're loved. For a husband who shows our kids that real strength is kindness. For friends who became family and family who became friends." I paused looking at each face in our crowded yard. But mostly I'm grateful for that empty church 5 years ago, because it made room for all of you. Diana wiped tears. Robert cleared his throat suspiciously. Martha raised her lemonade in a toast echoed by everyone present. As the evening wound down and guests began leaving each goodbye, came with hugs and promises of next week's dinners, tomorrow's playdates, ongoing connection that wasn't performative but genuine. Emma helped clear plates with the seriousness of someone with an important job. Daniel had passed out in Marcus's arms, drooling contentedly on his father's shoulder. This was our life now, messy, loud, imperfect, and absolutely everything I'd never known I needed. After the kids were in bed, Marcus and I sat on our back porch. The fairy lights Sarah had insisted on installing casting soft shadows. In the distance, fireworks painted the sky in celebration of independence, fitting for this anniversary of my own freedom. "I have something for you," Marcus said, producing an envelope. Inside was a photo I'd never seen before. It showed me at our wedding reception, surrounded by his family, my face radiant with joy, despite the morning's trauma. Someone had captured the exact moment I'd realized I was home. "Sarah found it in her camera files," he explained. "She thought you should have it." I studied the image, seeing not what was missing, but what was present. Love without conditions, support without manipulation, family without blood. "It's perfect," I whispered. My phone buzzed with a notification I almost ignored, but the sender made me pause. Tyler Richmond. The message was brief. "I know you don't want to hear from me. I just wanted you to know I'm clean working as a programmer and in therapy. You were right about everything. I'm sorry for what we did. Don't respond to this. Just live well. You deserve it." I showed Marcus, who read it with raised eyebrows. "Will you reply?" "No." I decided deleting the message. He's right. I don't want to hear from them, but I hope he finds peace. It was the closest to forgiveness I could offer indifference to their fate, mixed with vague hope they'd become better people far away from me. They'd stolen enough years. They wouldn't get any more. "Come on," Marcus said, pulling me up. "Let's go watch our babies sleep and plot their takeover of the ethical business world." As we stood in Emma's doorway watching her clutch the stuffed elephant Diana had given her, I marveled at the symmetry. 5 years ago, I'd stood in a doorway facing emptiness. Now every room in our house overflowed with life. My grandmother had been right in her letter. Fighting them hadn't cost me my humanity. It had revealed it. Every person gathered in our yard today was there because I'd chosen integrity over ease, truth over comfort, love over fear. The Richmonds thought they'd ended my story that June morning. Instead, they'd written its beginning. Their cruelty had been the catalyst for this joy. Their abandonment had created space for abundance. Their conditional love had taught me to recognize the unconditional version. "What are you thinking?" Marcus whispered as we headed to our room. "That I need to call the lawyer tomorrow." "Why, to update our will. Make sure if anything happens to us, the kids go to your family, to their real grandparents." He squeezed my hand. "Nothing's going to happen to us." "I know, but I want it in writing. I want them protected from any Richmond who might crawl out of the woodwork claiming rights they surrendered long ago." That night, as Marcus slept beside me, I lay awake planning. Not the desperate, anxious planning of my Richmond years, but the hopeful kind. Emma would start kindergarten soon. Daniel showed signs of Marcus's teaching gift. Phoenix Chen was expanding, creating more ethical jobs. My grandmother grew frailer, but remained sharp, determined to see her great-grandchildren reach milestones. Our story was still being written, each chapter better than the last, and somewhere in federal facilities across the country, the Richmonds served their sentences, their cautionary tale complete, while mine continued to unfold. They'd given me one last gift with their absence, the knowledge that family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining appearances. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other daily. It's about filling empty spaces with love instead of letting them echo with pain. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments of ordinary magic. Emma would paint masterpieces on construction paper. Daniel would learn new words to mispronounce adorably. Marcus would make his students feel seen and valued. I would help build businesses that lifted communities. And Sunday, our full table would gather again, bound not by blood but by choice, not by obligation but by joy. The empty church pews had become full rooms, full hearts, full lives. As sleep finally claimed me, I smiled at the thought that would have horrified my birth family. I'd lost nothing that mattered and gained everything that did. The Richmonds had taught me exactly who not to be. In failing as family, they'd freed me to succeed at building my own. Their legacy was cautionary, mine was revolutionary, and it was only just beginning. Thank you so much for joining me on Alysia's journey from betrayal to triumph. If this story touched your heart, reminded you that chosen family can be stronger than blood, or helped you recognize your own worth beyond others' opinions, please take a moment to like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. Share this with someone who needs to hear that walking away from toxic family isn't giving up, it's growing up. And comment below, have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own happiness? How did you find the courage to choose yourself? Remember, you deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate your presence, not tolerate it. Until next time, may you find the strength to build your own loving family, whether born or chosen, and may every empty seat in your life make room for someone who truly deserves to be there. With love and hope for your own journey of freedom.